Those manners and mores are starting to wither on the vine. Americans are becoming less self-governing, both as individuals and as political communities.
I don't know how much you follow the current cutting edge of technology, especially things like cryptocurrency, but these sort of self-enforcing monetary systems essentially are, in my opinion, perfectly representative of the American frontier when it comes to things like finance.
Bottom line, decentralization of knowledge and the transference of knowledge is critically important, particularly in today's world, to keeping freedom alive.
You mentioned a few moments ago that in American history, there's always a frontier. And it got me wondering where the frontier might be today. Obviously, in a certain way, the borders of the nation have been fairly well defined for some time. But is the frontier so significant in the American mind that even once the borders are well defined, that the frontier lives on in our minds? How does it live on? Where is the frontier today? Are there particular issues or maybe geographies or particular dynamics in American culture that represent the frontier today, do you think?
Yeah. So the first thing to note is that the manners and mores that Americans developed throughout the course of the 19th century, the manners and mores associated with this idea of rugged individualism, of the frontier, of radical self-governance and self-reliance, the idea of the self-made man. Right? These are ideas unique to America. You don't see these ideas being developed anywhere else in the world, right? So the manners and mores that Americans developed over the course of the 19th century lived on, continued to live on into the 20th and now into the 21st century. I will say, however, of course, that those manners and mores are starting to wither on the vine. Americans are becoming less self-governing, both as individuals and as political communities. Now, on the question of the frontier, where is the frontier today? Well, it is the case, right, that the physical frontier that Jackson Turner Maine or Frederick Jackson Turner wrote about. He wrote the great book called The Frontier Thesis, which attributed American values to the fact that there had always been a frontier. Then when you get to the end of the frontier, that is to say, when the pioneers and the settlers reach the Pacific Ocean, the question then becomes, well, now what? If the frontier dies, does that mean that the moral values, the manners and mores die as well? Well, first, as I said, they live on and will live on for centuries. Here's the point, specifically answering your last question. There will always be new frontiers, right? And we see the new frontiers all the time. The new frontiers include those places under the oceans. The new frontiers include those places in outer space. Those frontiers include, what you see in a high-powered microscope. Those frontiers continue. I'm holding up my iPhone with a plug for Arsenal Football Club. Those frontiers, right? Inside this phone is a whole world. There's a universe. There is a universe of knowledge inside that phone, right? So as long as the mind is free to pursue knowledge and to seek new knowledge.
I don't know how much you follow the current cutting edge of technology, especially things like cryptocurrency, but I think I'd be remiss not to mention at this point in the conversation that it certainly seems to me that something like Bitcoin and these sort of self-enforcing monetary systems essentially are, in my opinion, perfectly representative of the American frontier when it comes to things like finance. And I don't know if you have opinions about that, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I don't. And so what little I know of cryptocurrencies, my sense of the matter is that what you've just described is correct, that it's certainly a new frontier. Without
Right.
that is undoubtedly true. And they're also operating outside the confines of state control, which I think also has a connection to the principles of the revolution.
I want to bounce off of you a more open-ended question, just to give you a general prompt to possibly share some thoughts on a larger topic, which is intellectual culture and intellectual economy, because we know that the founding fathers operated in this very interesting context in terms of technology and communication, right? We know that they wrote a lot of letters, and in a lot of ways, the American mind was forged in this kind of decentralized correspondence network. You're a professor at Clemson, but you also read a newsletter yourself. We're currently living through something like some sort of renaissance in independent creative communication, also decentralized on the web. I'm just curious if you have any intuitions or observations or hypotheses about the nature of decentralized intellectual freedom and the American frontier, because it seems like there's just a very tantalizing parallel there.
Yeah, yeah. So that's another new frontier is the new medias that are arising in opposition to, or at least counter to the mainstream media, big media. Take Substack, where I am writing as the redneck intellectual. The Substack is it's an extraordinary new technology, which allows, I don't know how many people are actually on Substack, but I know that at the very least, it's thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people are on Substack. And that ranges from the Barry Weisses and Andrew Sullivans of the world who broke away from the mainstream media to go out and to their own new frontier and create new media centers. And that's what they're doing. But it's not just them, right? It's literally thousands, tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of people who have now been given a platform to launch their voice to whomever they can get to listen to them. And so I think the decentralization of knowledge is a function, primary function of a free society. And when you get the centralization, the authoritarianism of knowledge, where it's only coming from a few selected power centers that are in fact aided and abetted by government power, then that is definitely a source of potential future tyranny. So the decentralization of knowledge, I think, is a part of the American story. And you're right about the American Revolution. It was a revolution by correspondence in many ways, right? There were committees of correspondence all over the country. So yes, bottom line, decentralization of knowledge and the transference of knowledge is critically important, particularly in today's world, to keeping freedom alive.